Good morning, world. This podcast, Chats with Baba, is about empowering parents. I want to talk about that for a few minutes and why I saw the need for this podcast. For instance, last week I was pointing out some things that parents should take the responsibility of developing in their children, and you have to start that early. That is paying attention, listening, following directions, starting and finishing a task. Those are things that any teacher would expect of children. Now, this podcast is about my caring for children, all children, but especially Black children. And I want to talk about that for just a minute. And just bear with me. As a professor of early childhood, I do a lot of reading and follow a lot of reports. And there's an area of concern relative to Black children in reading, literacy, and mathematics. And in 50 years, the gap, when compared to others, and I don't want to get into all of that, but when compared, our children are behind. And so I spent a considerable amount of time saying, okay, what can we do about this? So this podcast is to empower parents to empower their children. Let me digress for just a moment. If you saw Good Morning America today, there were two young Black girls on there with their mothers. These are elementary school girls who had started a business about bows, putting your hair in, etc. Well, they went to their mother with this idea, and their parents just took and ran with it. So here they are now getting exposure with their little business all over the universe. So my point is, the capacity for young children is unbelievable given the support from parents. Now, our children, and I'm saying our children because they're young Black children, seem to be confronted with more hurdles than anybody else. But so what? These two girls are just a personification of what is possible given the support of parents. So each week on my podcast, I try to speak to a topic that's relative to children's development and their intelligence. Some years ago, we thought when a newborn came into the world, it's just a baby. You feed it, you clothe it, you sleep it, and that's all. And that's what we did until they got to the point where they're speaking, etc. But what has been learned over the last 30 to 40 years is that children are born ready to learn. They're born ready to learn. And the scientists and researchers have spent an enormous amount of time just looking at infants, looking at toddlers, and looking at what their capacity is. And so what we know now is that children are learning all the time. Now, what does that got to do with this podcast? And what does that have to do with the message I'm trying to bring to parents and others for that matter? What we do know is that language and the ability to think begins early. What we do know is that many preschool children now have language capacity of vocabulary into the thousands of words, 10,000s of words, depending upon their exposure and their experience. On the flip side, a lot of young Black children aren't doing well when it comes to literacy. So this podcast is an effort to inform parents of what the capacity of young children is relative to their intelligence and their development. So the Chats with Baba is I try to take a topic, a weekly topic, and speak to it in terms of things that parents can, is to inform parents of what is possible. We do know that if we lay a good foundation early, it will sustain itself through life. And what we do know is that with a good foundation um, and a good vocabulary, one of the predictors of success is children's use of language um, and their vocabulary. One of my early books speaks to three things that's very important to children's development: self-confidence, good thinkers, studious, and the ability to express themselves. Those are some early characteristics. There are others, but those are very important. And so as I talk about these topics on a weekly basis, and you kind of weave the pieces together, you'll see that they are connected. You know, as I said last week, um, paying attention, listening, following directions, the ability to start and finish a task are very important things relative to school readiness. One of the weeks before that, I talked about the different E's: exposure, enrichment, experience. And one of the weeks before that, so my point is all of these pieces absolutely are connected. And so today, today I just want to again talk about um, the notion of empowering parents to do those things that's going to sustain their children as they get ready for school and carry them through life. And a lot of that has to do with asking questions, talking to them, making comments about them, inviting them to participate in discussions with you, sharing things about what they're thinking. You're reading to them, having picture books that illustrate uh, different things. And so by doing all these things, you are absolutely investing in the future of your children. Let me just kind of digress for a moment. I was looking at a blog by Diane Ravitch. And in her blog, she said that the Florida legislators are trying to eviscerate the public schools. I said, an interesting word. So naturally, I want to know the meaning of that word. And it means to remove or to wipe out. So, having that understanding of language is critical, and having understanding to what that means in relation to my work is also critical. So I'm saying that to say that as you're helping children in their ability to develop language skills and to express themselves, it'll pay off in the long run. So you're investing in your children during the early years is very critical. One of the things that I look at, and I've watched a young lady at my church grow up. And, she's now at one of the leading institutions in the state of Georgia and is doing incredibly well. She used to be a young, shy person, but now she's just blossomed. And as I watch her, she also reminds me of my granddaughter, who is about to go to college and is making some decisions about where she wants to go and so forth and so on. So my point is, time does not stand still. We can't go back and capture 1 second from yesterday. So the time that we spend in helping to develop and shape our children is critical. The early childhood is the years of the excuse me, the early years are very critical, but it's the shortest period in the human life to build the foundation that will sustain you for life. So again, in the empowerment process, in reading to them, in speaking to them, playing games, board games, all of these things are contribute to the development of your children's literacy skills, and so it's a long-term commitment. I was speaking to two persons yesterday who were here doing some work at my house, and she was asking me what was it that I was involved in, and I explained to her, and she said, "Oh, absolutely." She was also then shared with me about her own children, and so forth and so on. So I think it's important, parents, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but I want to, that the early years and what happens during those early years sets the stage for life. You can't say enough, parents, about reading and speaking to your children. And I'm talking now as an elder, a grandfather, that I saw the importance when my children were growing up, and even with my grandchildren, of having a time during the day that we would chat and talk. And I would explore with them different words. They would say, "What does that mean?" I said, "It's too easy for me to tell you. Let's get a book. Let's get a dictionary." So the point is to involve them as they are developing vocabulary. For example, my grandson called me yesterday. He said, "Hey, Baba." I said, "Hey, grandson, what's up, buddy?" He said, "I just called. I just wanted to chat with you." I said, "Okay." So I said, "What's on your mind?" All of that to say that if you make it possible for your children to approach you and not shut them out, you can always engage them. And in the process of engaging them, they are expressing themselves. And as they express themselves, what you want to, as you're listening, you want to affirm what they're saying to you. You want to help them to build self-confidence. And all of that goes a long way relative to how they will do in situations where they're called on. And so again, just the notion of the early years. Now I want to go back for a moment. What I talked about last week of paying attention, listening, and those characteristics, one of the elements that is absolutely clear in doing that is, now, what do you do in terms of listening and paying attention with babies and infants? The operative word with babies and infants is play, play. Let me say it again, play. The vehicle that children best learn, babies now and infants, is through play. That's what they do. You don't have to teach them how to play. They just naturally do it. And what you want to do is to provide opportunities and experiences. One of the things that really engages young children is a ball, just a soft ball, because they can push it, they can roll on it, they can lay on it, and they can't hurt themselves with it. And it just fascinates them of what they can do with it. So the area of play is so critical to young children's development. That's how they basically learn. It always irritates me, excuse me, if you will, when I hear people say, "Let's stop playing and get to work." Play is children's work. And I encourage people to say something else other than stop playing. That's what they best do. They play. Children enjoy play, and just they laugh, they and on and on and on. So my point is that as I speak to these topics in the podcast about child development, about children's intelligence, about the natural genius in children, and I'm not just saying words. I want you to understand that it's there, and it has to be nurtured, and it's not by accident. When I'll go to the two little young Black girls that were on Good Morning America, and their mothers saw in them a real possibility, and their mothers supported the business. And just think about this: 2 elementary school girls now got national exposure on an idea that germinated from their thinking. So here again, you want to provide experiences and exposure, and one never knows. If you plant a seed in good soil, it will germinate a product. If you plant a seed in concrete, it won't grow anything. It won't even take. But if you plant a seed in good soil and you nurture it, we don't know what it will do. But the Bible says it will germinate a good product. So it's important. It's important for you as a parent to, understand the importance of time spent with with children and the opportunities that you can provide for them. And so that just encourages them as they encounter hurdles and challenges in life. Yeah, your children, or today's children, will live in a very changing world. And the question is, how will they fit, and what is their preparation to be able to handle the challenges that they will be confronted with? And all the studies and stuff that I look at in my work as a professor comes back to what happens during the early years of development. What kind of exposure, what kind of enrichment, what kind of experience. And so, as I said, the critical word or critical factor here is your willingness to invest in their future, because the future is now. The future is now. This pandemic is changing everything. How they will complete school, how they will enter opportunities in life. It's just changing everything. I mentioned the pandemic. It's sort of good news, bad news. If you understand the nature of the school year, it's 180 to 190 days. And much of the year unfolds from August through the spring. And when you get into the spring, schools are generally administering inventories, tests to see what children have learned. So they've lost a significant part of this year, a significant part. And the question, one of the questions that comes to mind is, what do we do to bridge that gap? What experiences were provided, if any, and what do we do about it? Now, you have to pardon the personal reference, because I do understand just the importance of how much teaching means to children, and what the world has learned from this pandemic is that teaching is more. It's a very interactive process. It's engaging the learner, that is the student, in what they're doing and guiding them through that. So without that, then some children are just lost. So my point is that, can you make up for lost time? I'm not sure. But what has to be done, we have to bridge where they are to where they're going. We have to bridge that. We have to bridge that through experiences and opportunities, either at home, at church, in some community organization. Somehow we have to bridge what the pandemic has done to schooling for this year. And it's not going to be an easy task. I had a dear friend tell me just the other day, who shall remain nameless, some of what he saw in the schools, and it's of great concern. And he has the credentials to make the judgments of what he saw. Now, part of that has to do with what resources do children have at home? And in some cases, they don't have access to electronics. They don't have access to books and things of that nature. So what I'm saying is that we need to be concerned about that as parents, and what can be done to bridge that opportunity. It's not, and I'm not talking about in terms of being hopeless, but there is a gap there, and somehow that gap has to be bridged from where they were to where they are and where they're going. So just you have to stay alert and pay attention to what schools may offer this summer. There will be some summer enrichment programs, and I'm saying as a parent, you should try to take advantage of that moving forward. So with that, I hope some of what I'm saying in terms of what this podcast is about is to empower parents, and what subsequent podcasts will be about. I'm always going to be talking about issues pertaining to children's development, issues pertaining to children's intelligence, and your role in nurturing that. I wish there was an opportunity that we could have an exchange, some feedback, where I could respond to questions that you may have. But one of the key things that you would hope is to have a healthy relationship with your child, a healthy relationship. And remember, they are children. So with this podcast, I hope there's some nuggets that you've been able to derive. And reading, literacy are critical to your children's development. So until next week, I hope this podcast has offered you some insight into the things that will make life hopefully better for your children. Signing off, this is Baba.